Let's talk about Xbox Series XL. More powerful refresh of the Xbox Series X console. Sounds interesting? So let's look into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So we are currently bombarded with all kinds of PlayStation 5 Pro information. Specs leaks, release date leaks and that kind of stuff. Everyone talks about it right now. I mean, yeah, it's exciting times. A new console is coming probably this year, so everyone talks about it. And at the same time, I get a lot of people asking me questions like, but Mads, what about Xbox? I mean, is Xbox going to produce their own more powerful console, right? Like Xbox Series X Pro or, you know, however they would go naming it, right? Now, it sounds like they're not really going to produce a new console per se, right? I mean, don't expect a Pro model of the Xbox Series X console, right? I mean, there's been a number of leaks already from reliable sources too, suggesting that Xbox may make the refresh of the console, and I kind of want to talk about it today too. And looks like they are planning to release a proper next-gen Xbox in 2026, like late 2026. So it looks like it doesn't make much sense for them to like produce a totally new console right now or like a year later, right? Because like 1 year, 2 years later, they will have a new console anyway, and it looks like they want to go with this kind of hybrid thing, like, well, not really Switch, but they want to have like 2 SKUs, so a mobile gaming device and a standard console. But that's coming in 2026, sounds like, right? But I want to talk about the Xbox Series X refresh. I call it Xbox Series XL because this is what I would like to see from that console. I mean, we've seen the leak about the Xbox Series X refresh, you know, the one from the FTC leak where the slides were suggesting a new console without optical drive, probably a little bit smaller. It would have a cylinder shape. It would come with the new controller with some haptic feedback features, right? So that's the leak, but even back then Microsoft did say that things have changed, and so I still think we're probably going to get something, but I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to get what was in that leak per se, right? Like dot by dot. So here what I'm actually proposing, and this is not my idea. I mean, this is something that Digital Foundry actually suggested a couple of months ago, like last year, when first leaks about PlayStation 5 Pro started appearing. Digital Foundry also debated whether it actually makes sense, because at that time not many people actually believed that PlayStation 5 Pro is real. Many people were saying it doesn't make sense, that it would not be powerful enough to make a difference and that kind of stuff. And but here we are. Looks like PlayStation 5 Pro exists. It's it sounds like it's coming this year. But back then, Digital Foundry also spoke about something that Microsoft could do with Xbox Series X, literally, to kind of compete with PlayStation 5 Pro. And it sounds like this would actually makes even more sense now, since we kind of know what the power envelope of PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be, because looks like PlayStation 5 Pro is going to offer around 50% more. I mean, not power, but I guess, rendering performance, right? That's what the like internal documentation suggests, right? I mean, yes, it will offer twice the ray tracing rendering performance, or it will have machine learning capabilities finally, something that Xbox Series S even have, right? So, you know, PlayStation 5 Pro will be much improved over PlayStation 5, but, you know, some of that stuff is already in Xbox Series consoles, right? Like some of the technologies, like machine learning and stuff. And but obviously it's less powerful. So, you know, the difference, you know, even that 50%, that will be significant difference. But what Digital Foundry suggested a couple of months ago was that maybe Microsoft just should, you know, release an Xbox Series X refresh. So not a new console. Don't change anything component-wise. Digital Foundry just suggests that maybe Microsoft should just, you know, raise the clock speeds of both CPU and GPU, right? And maybe some slight improvements here and there, because obviously with the higher clock speeds, they would probably have to make sure that the cooling system is actually enough to cool down the system. But if they went with 6 nanometers chip, that would produce less heat, so maybe they wouldn't even have to change much when it comes to the cooling system, right? I don't know. I mean, if they are planning a refresh, you know, there will be some internal changes anyway when it comes to like cooling system. And I mean, you know, 2-3 years after the launch, I'm sure they have got enough of data that will allow them to improve the you know, the efficiency of the chip and some components and cooling system too, right? That's how it works. So what Digital Foundry really suggests is to upclock CPU and GPU by, I mean, you know, I don't know how much they could go with, right? I mean, 20% maybe. I mean, 30 would be great, but 20, let's just say minimum 20%. That means that CPU would run at not 3.6, but let's assume 20% for both CPU and GPU, but 20% would be 4.3, 4.4 gigahertz in a multi-threaded scenario, and probably 4.6 at single thread scenario. So that would be CPU. That's a big boost in terms of performance, that's for sure. Then you get 20% increase in GPU performance, and you know, by raising the clock speeds by 20%, and that would actually be a really really significant boost, because then you're not only raising the GPU performance but also CPU performance, and obviously all the GPU internal engines performance too, like, you know, geometry engine and all the caches would run faster, just like PlayStation 5, right? I mean, all these internal engines in PlayStation 5 run at much higher clock speed. That's why they are more efficient, right? So the power, all the teraflops are cool, but, you know, at the same time, you know, if everything just runs faster, that's kind of helps a little bit as well. So, but by raising clock speeds on the CPU and GPU, Xbox would not only get more teraflops, because, you know, higher clock speeds of the GPU means that the, you know, the more shading compute power they get, right? Because I mean, 20% would higher clock speeds means 20% more teraflops, right? So 12 teraflops right now, 20% of that is like 2.4. So we are talking about a console that would offer 14.4, like close to 15 teraflops, right? So, I mean, and if we look at PlayStation, right, and PlayStation will offer around 50% increase in performance, then, you know, like, yeah, I mean, we can't really compare the teraflops per se, and also PlayStation 5 sounds like some parts of the GPU will have, you know, the RDNA 3 or maybe even 4 features, right? That's possible. I mean, AI and that kind of stuff, ray tracing capabilities sounds like it's, you know, PlayStation 5 will get from, you know, other, you know, not RDNA 2 architecture, so maybe RDNA 3. But still, for the most part, the base for the PlayStation 5 chip is still going to be RDNA 2, right? So it's not really that. So in reality, you know, we would end up with consoles that maybe would, like PlayStation could have potentially like 20% better, more power, let's call it right now. So I think in such scenario, that would allow Microsoft to actually not keep power narrative per se, but it would be good enough to wait for the proper next-gen console that probably is being planned for late 2026, right? So, I mean, and listen, like, this has been done in the past, so this is not something that I, like Digital Foundry or me, are talking out of our rear end, right? I mean, Microsoft did improve these clock speeds in the past in their previous consoles. One, let's talk about Xbox One back in 2013. So originally, Xbox One, the big fat VCR Xbox One with Kinect and everything, originally CPU was supposed to be clocked at 1.6 gigahertz, 8 cores at running at 1.6 gigahertz. But literally a couple of weeks or like 3 months before the launch, they decided, like, internal testing showed them that they could actually there is a room to increase the clock speeds without, any significant bad influence on the system, right? They raised the clock speeds by 10%, right? Like up to like 175. So 1 gigahertz, 1.75 gigahertz. And, that gave Xbox a little bit of a boost when it comes to like CPU performance. And there were even some games, CPU limited, that actually ran better on Xbox One than PlayStation 4, because PlayStation 4 did run at 1.6. And that was the first time they did that. Then there was another time, and that's actually even a better comparison, because I'm sure you remember that halfway through last generation, what they did, they introduced two consoles, Xbox One X, which was a really totally different architecture, really on many levels, but also they refreshed Xbox One, and they called it Xbox One S. And Xbox One S not only was smaller, not only it offered it offered Blu-ray capabilities, like and 4K upscaling back then, but also it offered faster GPU, I think, right? So really Xbox One. So if you compare, it wasn't by much. It was like by 10%, I think, or something like that. And they did that only to improve HDR capabilities of the console, right? But in reality, some of the games on Xbox One S did run a little bit better than on original Xbox One, right? So they didn't really plan for like a really more powerful console per se. That was just to improve the HDR, right? I mean, not improve really, because they did implement HDR with Xbox One S. Xbox One had no such capabilities, I think, right? So really, like you see, back then they improved CPU performance by 10% at launch, and then they improved GPU performance by 10% with Xbox One S, refresh. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to do that here, and that would not raise pretty much any costs, because all they would do is just improve the clock speeds. They could still be selling old Xbox Series X and then a refresh with the better capabilities. I'm not sure if they want to, because here's another question. I mean, I'm not sure if everyone will want to go with a more powerful or like the refresh if it will offer no optical drive, right? So some people may say, oh, I'll stick to my old Xbox Series X because it has a optical drive. I mean, that's a possibility too. But really, without any R&D and I mean, they wouldn't really have to do much really to improve Xbox Series X and kind of take it closer to PlayStation 5 Pro performance, right? Because like even right now, we actually seeing more and more developers taking better advantage of, you know, the wide architecture that Xbox Series X already supports, and all the teraflops and everything, right? So yeah, I think that would be a good idea. So kudos to Digital Foundry for actually suggesting that. But hey, it's just Digital Foundry talking about it, me talking about it. Whether Microsoft will go and do it, I have no idea, right? I mean, it would make sense in my opinion, especially that with PlayStation 5 Pro, for example, developers will really have to spend some extra time to take advantage of these extra capabilities like better ray tracing and everything. That will have to be optimized. I mean, obviously, the more power that will, you know, come with a console, that, you know, even older games will take advantage of some of it when it comes to like running at higher resolutions or better frame rate, because CPU will run faster, right? And, you know, but really same would happen with Xbox Series XL, let's call it still like that. Because if you just raise the clock speeds and you don't really make any other changes to the GPU or CPU, right? You are just getting a free extra performance. And developers wouldn't even have to optimize for that console because they would still optimize for Xbox Series X, right? But in the meantime, you know, games that would run at 60 frames per second and, for example, I don't know, 1080p on, you know, 20-30 more percent more powerful Xbox Series X would be capable of running this game close to 1440p, right? I mean, game engines these days are scalable anyway. They use automatic resolution scaling anyway, so developers would not have to do anything to improve these games on these consoles anyway, right? So it actually makes even more sense now than it used to, because, you know, back in the days, like 2 generations ago, you know, these games would have locked frame rate, would have locked resolution, so more power will not really do much for these games. But these days, game engines are using dynamic resolution scaling, so like, yeah, I mean, these games would just run and look better on these consoles, both PlayStation 5 Pro and Xbox Series X, guys. So that particular thing, you know, dynamic nature of these game engines these days will help PlayStation 5 Pro for sure, because we know it's coming, and would potentially help Xbox Series XL if it existed, right? But like I said, it's just an idea. I wonder if Microsoft will actually even consider something like that. But we'll see how that goes, guys. So yeah, interesting times ahead of us for sure. I'm actually really looking forward to see what PlayStation 5 Pro will be able to do with some, you know, older games and new games. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I wouldn't really mind an Xbox like 20-30% more powerful, faster Xbox Series X either. So we'll see how that goes. So guys, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. Would you buy such a console? Let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.